Welcome back to another episode of Keys of Currency, where we interview high-level entrepreneurs doing high-level things. On today's episode, I had a high-level entrepreneur by the name of Clint Cooper. Clint is the owner and CEO of Padley out here in Buford, Georgia. And we talked about how the company came about, talked about partnerships, strategy, marketing channels, work-life balance, family, the whole nine. Hope you guys get a lot of value and enjoy the episode. All right, Clint Cooper, how are you, man?
I'm great, man. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. I'm excited to have this conversation, man. Before we get into the meat and potatoes, tell me about your background and how you got into real estate.
Okay. Yeah. So, grew up here locally in Metro Atlanta. Grew up in Snellville. Went to Brookwood High School. Went to Georgia College in Milledgeville for 4 years, or it was actually closer to 5 years. Took a little victory lap, but after that, I went to work for my dad, who owned a logistics business. Found a side hustle in sports betting. Left my dad's business, started doing that. Left the sports business, got into real estate. And kind of how I landed in real estate was I literally had a personal home, sold it, made some money, and was like, maybe I need to do a little more of this.
Nice, man. So you got into real estate. You had a sports betting business. What happened with that business?
Me and my partner just decided to split ways at the time. And it was more of, it was, he was the leader of the business. He was, the sports bettor. I was just kind of running the back end. I was kind of in, I loved the business, but I was in the wrong seat. And me and him, from a standpoint of, I was in an integrator role, and I'm not an integrator at all. So I was just kind of in the wrong seat, and it just didn't make sense for me to continue on with the business. And, he's still one of my great friends, and he's absolutely crushing it. But it was just time for me to move on and go find something that was, fulfilling me more, because it's kind of when you're in the wrong seat in a business, you get burnout, really quick. And I think that's just what happened. I was getting burnout and needed to find a more natural position for myself. So I went out and decided to try real estate.
Gotcha. So, from doing the little bit of research I've done on you, you guys got this awesome compound here, man. You guys have got this new company in Padley. You got some partners. But before this became a company, you had Cooper Cash Offer, right?
Correct.
So Cooper Cash Offer, you guys were based out of Atlanta?
Based right here.
Okay.
Same place. And it's the same company. We just did a name change this time last year.
Gotcha. What made the name change?
Well, I brought on some partners, and I didn't really like the fact that it was about me. I wanted it to be about not only, I wanted my partners to like the name, I wanted my people to like the name. When I came up with the name in the beginning, I was a very immature businessman. And I just saw an opportunity to create more alignment with my partners and my people to really rally around something versus it sounds like we're rallying around Clint, because I had my name in it. So that's kind of why I did it. It wasn't any particular reason. We could have kept it, but it was mainly me who wanted to change it. It wasn't, them asking me. It was, I wanted to build something that they were proud of as well, and not just it be about me.
Gotcha. What do you guys specialize in?
We're mainly wholesale. We do some fix and flips. We've got a few of those going on, and we used to be mainly fix and flip, and now we're, about 95% wholesale.
Okay. And how many partners do you guys have?
I've got two partners. Yep.
Okay. So let's talk about that a little bit, because we get a lot of people that are doing this solo and they say, I want a partner.
Sure.
Right? But they might be a visionary, and then when they go find another partner, it's another visionary. They don't understand the importance of finding a partner that complements your weaknesses. So when you went out and you're like, I'm going to get a partner in the business, how did you go about identifying how to find that partner?
Well, I think in the sports betting business, I learned, I was a visionary, my partner was a visionary, and that's why I got burnt out, because I was in the wrong seat. I needed to find someone that complemented my skill set that was complete opposite of me. So what I did was, when I found, and I didn't know he was going to turn out to be my COO at the time, Tyler, but we were just complete opposites. I'm very much all gas, go, go, go. And he's very much brakes, keeping me aligned, making sure I'm, dot my I's, cross my T's, making sure we're not making, just irrational decisions. We're making data-driven decisions, and really cleaning up the operation side of the business. So when I found Tyler, he was complete opposite of me. He was smart, very good with financials, which I wasn't strong in. And, I saw, he did home remodeling. And when I thought of that, I was just like, this guy is so different than me, because whenever I have something wrong at my house, I'm calling someone within 30 seconds. So that was kind of the light bulb. I just knew he was super smart. He aligned from a core value standpoint. We had very similar values, and we were just very different.
Got you. So you got a third partner.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
In Rhen.
Yep.
Talk to me about that partnership.
So Rhen was my coach. He was he did one-on-one coaching for me and Tyler. We were doing it this time last year. And, I saw he had left his previous company, and it was one of those opportunities that I saw I was going to do whatever it takes to get him. Just one of those guys who, in my opinion, you could put him on the Mount Rushmore of wholesalers. He's done his last company. He was doing 100 to 125 wholesales a month. I was thinking, how do I get this guy? I found out he left this company before everybody else. I knew other big players in our game were going to be after him. How can I get him? So, I put my sales hat on and sold him on coming to work with us. And, it's been an absolute game changer for the business. Rhen has really been very influential in my life and my development as a person and a business person. And we've really seen massive growth this last year since adding him. And, he's been a very integral part of how we've been able to build this company so fast. We wouldn't be even close to where we are without him.
So Tyler came on, he was an employee first, right?
He was my first employee. I hired him. So I started the business, just backtracking. Started the business in December of 2020.
Okay.
So I'm about 2.5 years into real estate. Okay. And that, when I say 2.5 years into real estate, I didn't know a thing about it other than I bought a house personally with a realtor and had no clue how the transaction worked or anything. I just, kind of put up some cash for a down payment on a house, got a traditional loan. I had no idea how the game worked. So I started from square one. Okay. It took me a couple months to get my first deal. Got my first deal that first year, basically by myself. I did a little over $1 million in gross profit and netted, without employees, a little over $800K that first year. So I had a very good first year, and that built the kind of the foundation for hiring. So, I hired Tyler about 3/4 of the way through my, first year of doing real estate. And what I tasked him with was direct to seller marketing. At the time, I was getting all my deals and I was buying everything through realtors and wholesalers. I was basically just making connections nonstop. That was, how my day looked that first year. Was I was just cold calling realtors, cold calling wholesalers, making as many possible connections as I possibly could. And I did really well that first year, but I knew there was a missing piece, and that missing piece was direct to seller marketing. I knew that was how I was going to make the biggest rips, and have ultimate control over the deal. Now, I tasked Tyler with that because he is he's a nuts and bolts guy, and that's not me. And I had figured it out a little bit. I had closed a few deals, got a VA, had some cold callers, but I knew it was never going to be really good till I got someone who was very much detail oriented and in the weeds. And that's what I tasked him with. And basically, I pretty much gave him the title of COO right off the bat. Now, that was probably irresponsible of me, but it worked out. It worked out really well. And now he's the COO, and we have, 40 plus employees now.
Okay. So when you found Tyler, how did you set it up to where you're like, okay, listen, come on, I'm going to share my vision. This is what I believe in. This is my vision. This is where we're going to go. How did you get him to, I guess, believe in the vision? Was it money? Was it promise of equity in the company? Like, talk to me about that.
So I think when, you're first hiring, you go out to find that first hire or whatever. I wouldn't be looking for a partner to start. Like, so many people go out there and try to find a partner right off the bat. And I think it's a horrible decision because you have to align in a lot of ways to have a partnership because it's essentially a marriage. And with Tyler, I thought of him as an employee in the start. I thought there was a possibility we could be partners one day, but after, a previous breakup, I was like, we're not going to do that right now. We're going to see what happens. And I think that's how anybody should do it. But when you're first hiring that first employee, you have to sell them on the opportunity. You have to put your salesman hat on and sell them on the opportunity, and sometimes be creative with how you structure their comp plan. Now, Tyler, he was making about $100,000 a year at his previous job. He was in corporate America. I knew I wanted him. I knew that we were, aligned. I had to come up with a flexible plan for him to make sure he's not going to get a pay drop. And that took a risk on my part. But at the same time, when you look at hiring someone and you look at, say, hey, I'm going to pay you 6 figures to come work here. Well, I don't look at it as 6 figures. I look at what is the cost for the first 3 months, because if it doesn't work within the first 3 months, we're probably going to cut ties. I've always been big on, if it's not going to work in the first 3 months, it's probably not going to work at all. And so I looked at it, hey, I've got 3 months of expenses right here, laid out for Tyler. I have the money. I've made some great money to start my real estate career by myself. Let's invest some of it into a person. And that person was Tyler.
Got you. So 3 months of expenses. Now, when you started, you were pretty much just going through the school of hard knocks, just kind of winging it.
Yep.
Did you have any kind of education? Did you hire a mentor for it, or?
Yeah. So I was in Ryan Pineda's Future Flipper Mastermind. That was the first one I joined, and learned from him, learned from his COO Brian Davila, learned from the other members in the group. I was basically a sponge. I was trying to take as much information as I could, but also take as much action as possible. And I think that's one of the keys to getting started, is not only getting the information, but making sure you're taking massive action along the way. I was making some stupid mistakes, and I think I'm of the opinion, if you're not embarrassed by the mistakes you made, 4 or 5 months ago, you're not trying hard enough, right? Still to this day, I look back 3, 4 months ago and I'm embarrassed by the mistakes I made, and I'm not growing if I'm not continuing to make mistakes.
Got you. So you talked about how Rhen is now a third partner, right? That's very interesting because you found Tyler, who's a rock star COO, right? He's came in, he's elevated the business. And most wholesale businesses, it's like you have your visionary, you have your integrator. They're pretty much set from there. Now it's all about hiring the right employees. When Rhen became available, I know you've talked about previously, he was like a free agent, right? And you're like, I got to get this guy. What is it that Rhen is doing in the company that's really taking you guys to another level? So
his role is basically our strategic guy.
Okay.
He's our chief strategy officer, CSO, and but in my opinion, he acts as COO, he acts as CEO, he acts as, he's still in our director of acquisition seat. He just plays a lot of parts, right? He's got a successful coaching business that he runs as well, wartime CEO, but he does a little bit of everything. He's, ran a 200-person wholesale organization. So his job is basically to dive in every division and figure out, where we're missing. He brought a bunch of talent over, right? We brought a bunch of his, former employees over, and that's been a huge boost. So he just looks at every area of the business. He sees where our inefficiencies are, and he tells us how to go solve them, especially Tyler. He works very much hand in hand with Tyler of teaching him how to be a COO, because he was once a COO before he got elevated to CEO. And he basically built his previous business from scratch, and he knows, he's been there, done that. So when you have a guy like that, you can just use him in so many different areas. And that's why, we're at the place we are, is because he's came on board and been able to implement and also grow us, right? We're different leaders than we were before he came on. He's instilled leadership strategies. He's instilled, business strategies, just so many different areas of the business that we had no idea about. Mm. He's brought it to us.
Nice. So is he in the day-to-day activities?
Oh yeah. Yeah, very much so. He's in the director of acquisitions role, and he's the chief strategy officer. The plan for him is to eventually get out of that director acquisitions role and go work in a different department. But we're all hands on, and me too. As CEO, I'm in the director of dispositions role as well. I'll get on calls, hop on with sellers all the time. So we're very much in the weeds still, and we're an infant company. We pretty much started over when Rhen came on board, and during the building phase, before you kind of level off and get where you want to be and stabilize, you've got to very much be in the weeds. And it's so many people think, I just want to hire employees and I want to move out of the business. Well, guess what's going to happen? Your business is going to fail.
Yeah.
So we're very much in the weeds, and all of us.
Yeah, well, this is the year for it too, man. With the whole market shift and how everything's transitioning, they were talking about at CG how CEOs are going to have to get their hands dirty and lace up the boots and get involved in the business. So I think that's good for the audience to hear that you're not just here leading and running the company. You're actually out there talking to sellers and getting involved and getting your hands dirty. So let's transition a little bit. We got Padley, right? And we went from you and Tyler, and Rhen, right?
Yep.
Where are we at today? Like, how many deals is Padley doing per month? What is the revenue looking like? Talk to me about all that in the marketing channels.
Yeah. So right now, I think we've got scheduled to close 22 deals in June, and it's still very early in the month. A little over 600K for June right now. We closed 110K just yesterday. 3 deals closed 110K. With a wholesale business, it's going to be very variable, right? Like you're going to have, especially on your growth trajectory, you're going to have months where you hit up to 500 and then you go back to 350 and then you hit to 650 and then you go back down a little bit for a couple months and then you go back up. It's very variable. And, because, as real estate can change in a day and close, you could have 10 closings push in a month. So on the growth trajectory, you're going to have up months, down months, but as long as the overall trend over the long term is up, that's a good sign. And that's kind of where we're headed. So right now, I would say we're in that 20 to 25 deals a month range.
Okay.
Anywhere from 400 to 650K in revenue. And I expect us by the end of the year starting to hit some $1 million months and closing 40, 50 deals in a month.
Okay.
Yep.
You comfortable sharing like what kind of marketing costs you guys are having right now?
Sure. Typically, we're allocating 20% of revenue. So, for instance, if we have a 500K month, we allocate 100K to marketing for the next month. So it's very dependent on revenue, and I think it's our salespeople are driven by that too, because they know if they close more deals, we're going to spend more on their marketing the next months. So we try to keep it based off revenue.
Okay, and what are the profit margins looking like right now?
So typically, we're trying to maintain 30 to 40% profit margin right now. Yep,
it's not bad. That's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
What about number of employees?
So in the United States, about 20, and we have about 20 in Belize and the Philippines.
Okay, and I see this beautiful office you guys have. How many employees are like in the office? Is there any virtual?
Sure.
Talk to me about that.
So we have employees in Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia. It's funny, we have this big office, but most of our employees work from home. We are, our competition is flexible with how they allow their employees to be virtual, and we are very much that way too. You just have to be careful about how you create culture and how you create accountability. Because it's harder virtually than it is in person. But for us to get A players that are out of state or, maybe across the state, we have to be able to, still be able to have them as employees. And the way we're able to do that is virtually. But we still have, 7 to 8 people in office pretty much every day.
How are you finding these A players, man? Because what I'm starting to see is the companies like yours, like Padley, what's really separating them from the good companies, what separates the good from the great is the talent level.
Sure.
So how are you finding these rock star people to come and work for your company?
So I think it starts with the leaders of the company, right? It's not just, how do we go out and find these people, but A players want to be led by other A players. And you're only going to be able to attract you're never going to be able to track anyone above you, right? So you have to increase your business acumen, increase your leadership skills to be able to attract those A players. Like if you look at our company from this time last year to now, we're a completely different company. And that's because we've leveled up ourselves and we've leveled up our leadership skills. We leveled up how sophisticated we run our business. And that starts to attract those A players. And once you start getting a few A players, it starts to become a snowball effect where everybody's calling their friends, letting them know that, hey, I work for Padley now. You should come here too. This is a great organization. And that's what we've really started to happen over the past few months is we're starting to see a snowball effect of A players coming into our business.
That's awesome, man. What kind of things are you guys doing as far as like company culture and keeping a good atmosphere? Like, do you guys do company trips or bonuses? Like, talk to me a little bit about that.
Man, not really. Like, a lot of people think, culture is, having a ping pong table in the office and being, having a beer day on Fridays, being able to have a beer at your desk. That's really not it, man. It's what you're marching towards as a mission of the company and just the players you allow in your organization and what, kind of how we do things around here. That's what Rhen says culture is, how we do things around here. And if you get on our morning huddle every day with our sales team, it's just an infectious group. Everybody's preaching positivity. Everybody's preaching their good news. It's just when we have shadow days come in to shadow to potentially come work for us, they're just all amazed by our culture and the positivity in our warrior huddles in the morning. That's one thing too. We call each other warriors. When we introduced ourselves in the morning is, hey, good morning, warrior. Good morning, warrior. Mm-hmm. And we've kind of embodied that warrior mindset. And Rhen, brought that over. That's definitely all him. And what it creates is, just that warrior mindset.
That's awesome, dude.
Yep.
I love that. So how many markets are you guys in right now?
Just two. Just two. Atlanta and Mobile.
And you guys are doing 20 to 25 a month just in the two markets.
Correct. And I think that's one misconception that so many people have about wholesaling is, you get to 5-6 deals on a market and let's go to the next market. Well, we are of the opinion that we can do 200 deals a month in Atlanta alone. And that's kind of what, I don't know if we're going to want to get to 200 deals a month, but we're definitely going to want to get to 100 deals a month. And it's totally possible with the amount of people and houses that are in Atlanta.
Well, is there a lot of anxiety when it comes to running a big company like this? I mean, some people may not say it's a big company.
Sure.
Right. But when you have, how many employees you said you have?
About 40.
40 employees, you got partners, right? Which means you got to perform every single month, right? So is there a lot of anxiety and pressure that comes with that as the owner of the company?
Well, a little bit, but I it's all about how you frame it, right? I see it as more of an opportunity, and kind of what I tell all my employees when they get hired is, hey, I want you to have a better life while you're working with our company than you did before. And that is something that, I want them to make more money. I want them to have a better work-life balance. I want them to, overall have a happier life. And that's kind of my mission. So I think it's more of an opportunity to help people. It is a big weight to carry for sure when you're, worried about people's families and, their income and everything like that. It's a big weight, but, as long as I continue to get better and we come up with the right strategies and we work as hard as we possibly can, I'm confident with, lifting that weight, especially with the partners I have.
Are you guys offering benefits, or do you plan on getting to that point to where you're offering benefits to your employees?
Yeah. I mean, health insurance is definitely something that, we've very much been in talks about adding very, very soon. And I hear Tyler talking about it all the time. So yeah, we're going to add all that stuff, as revenues allow. This last year has been pretty much tough for all real estate investors across the board. And we kind of had to rebuild our war chest up of reserves. And we've been very careful about how we spend our money and making sure we're allocating it the right way. Right. And I think that, yeah, benefits are definitely going to be on the table very soon for all of our employees. It's not there yet, but we're mainly focused with making sure they're making solid paychecks every month, really solid paychecks, and supplying them with all the opportunity they can.
How big do you guys want to get as a company? I know you're at the 20 to 25 mark.
Yeah.
How many deals do you want to get? And is there like a limit? Do you feel like, you're like, we want to get to X amount of employees, X amount of deals, and after that, we don't want to grow. We just want to sustain that.
Sure. I mean, we've talked about, getting to $1 million a month and then planning on slowly phasing out of our director roles and, stabilizing the business. Now, visions change, right? Especially with people like myself who have just, all these dreams, ideas. And I think Rhen's the same way. I think Tyler's the complete opposite, but it just changes with time. So I don't know what we're going to end up doing. I tell, Rhen and Tyler all the time, we could be a $50-100 million a year company. Like, we could totally do that. Is wholesale going to be our primary strategy? I don't know. But when you go deep in a business and continue to go deep and deep, you can find different auxiliary businesses within a business. And we are definitely exploring other stuff. But right now, if I told you one thing, is our goal is to get to $1 million a month. Once we get there, are we going to stabilize or try to do something else? I don't know. That vision is constantly changing. And that's discussions that I have with my partners. That's one thing with having partners. You have to align from a vision standpoint. You have to align from a work ethic standpoint. If you don't have those two things, you're going to probably fail and probably have a partnership breakup. And that's why we're constantly focused on making sure we're aligned, having those hard conversations. We have hard conversations between us three all the time. And that's what makes us stronger. That's what makes us, that's why we're going to last. Yeah. And that's why so many business partnerships don't last.
That's important to touch on. Do you believe in work-life balance?
I believe that if you have really big dreams and you want to achieve great things, it's going to be hard to have work-life balance. I think that if you want to, and that's the beauty about business, right? You can build a lifestyle business where you can have plenty of time and go on vacations and work remote and, constantly be traveling, but you're limiting your ceiling by doing that. My ceiling is as high as I can possibly go. Like, I want to go to the freaking moon. So I'm going to have a lot less work-life balance than a lot of people. Now, luckily, I've got an extremely strong support system at home with my wife, and I'm able to, constantly navigate that. But if you want to be great, it's going to be tough to have that work-life balance, and I want to be great. And I think, all of, my partners are the same way.
Does your wife work?
No, she doesn't.
Okay. How many kids do you have?
2, 1 and 3. And, it is a very crazy time in my life for sure, especially with building this business and, them being at very young ages. I just have to make sure that my time spent with them is extremely valuable and I'm extremely present during that time, because there's plenty of people that spend, all day, every day with their families and whatnot, and they're not even present. So I'm just very conscious of that time that I have with them and the time that I spend with them on a daily basis, that 2 hours I'm home from work, and then those Saturdays and Sundays that, I'm spending really quality time with them. And I personally hired a CEO coach, executive leadership coach, to help me with that balance and drawing the line of when I'm working and when I'm not, because it's easy as entrepreneurs to keep it running, right, and never turn it off. So I have that problem big time, right? But I'm aware of it, and I'm getting coaching to make sure that the time I spend with them is extremely valuable.
Love that, man. I think most entrepreneurs and visionaries have that problem. It's like you said, I've had that problem personally, just shutting it down whenever I'm present around my family and just ignoring what I want on business-wise. Talk to me about your support system, though, man, because I've been in a position where, I'm very blessed. I got a wife, I got 3 girls. And if it wasn't for the support system that I have in my wife, I wouldn't even be here talking to you, right?
Sure.
She has allowed me to go out and do the things that are going to better us as a family and get us to where we financially want to be, right?
Yep.
So talk to me about how important it is to have that support system as an entrepreneur.
It's just so important because if you don't, it's not going to last. So many people end up in divorce or, they don't have good relationships with their kids. If you're not aligned, it's just like the business partnership I talked about. If you're not aligned from that vision standpoint and having those tough conversations on a regular basis, making sure that y'all are, very much aligned, it's not going to end well. And I think that's the thing that so many people avoid is just having those hard conversations with their business partnerships or wife. And my wife knows why I'm doing it. We have the same vision. She doesn't have to work because I'm able to provide for us. And she knows I just want so much for our family and for our kids. My rental portfolio. My rental portfolio is my daughter's names. That's like what the LLC name is, because one day I want to leave behind a bunch of stuff from them. Things that I wasn't given. And don't get me wrong, I didn't have a rough childhood by any means, but I want to be able to provide more than my parents did. Yeah. And, hopefully they'll be inspired to do the same. So I think it's just having that alignment and, being on the same page on a regular basis. She knows why I work hard. She knows I want to be able to provide for our family and have a life that, maybe me or her didn't have. And she's very much, she takes care of the kids on a regular basis, a lot more than I do. And she does that because she knows that that's the role she needs to play for us to be able to do the things we want to do.
Yeah. Would you say the biggest sacrifice you're having to make as a husband and dad is time?
100%. Yeah. And, one of the things that I'm going to get coaching on, and there's different seasons to business and there's different seasons to life, right? There's going to be a day where I'm going to be able to step away and, be more present, have more time with them. And that's the ultimate goal, right? But if I can do what others aren't willing to do for 2, 3, 4 years, I'm going to have a life that, none of those people could ever have because I was willing to put in that work on the forefront. So it's not going to be grind mode forever. Yeah. Now, I'm always going to be working. I don't think, something I will ever want to do is retire. I think I'm always going to have that itch to be working towards something. But there's going to be a time where I'm not in complete grind mode 24/7 like I am now. And she knows that, and that's the plan. But during the building phase to get where we want to be, it's going to take that effort. It's going to take that time constraint. And the key is just constantly being, open communication about that. Hey, where are we at? How long is it going to take to get there? What are we going to do when we get there?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think that's what you say is how long is it going to take to get there? Me and my wife have talked about that. And that's a tough thing to pinpoint is how long you're going to get there. But I definitely resonate with what you're going through as an entrepreneur. But steer back a little bit. Let's get back into the wholesale business.
Okay.
Marketing channels. What marketing channels are working for you guys right now? And what is your top marketing channel?
Okay. Cold calling, texting, direct mail, pay-per lead. That's it right now. Nothing crazy. And top marketing channel, I would say, is direct mail.
Okay.
I think that all marketing channels work. It's about how you go about it, right? I used to run TV, and when the market shifted, it was tough to afford that bill. So we turned that off, but I think there's going to be a time where we turn the TV ads back on. I think there's a time where we can get PPC running. But really, it's just being masters at those different marketing channels, right? I think that so many people are like, well, my cold calling doesn't work. Well, how are you doing it? Are you training your cold callers every day? Are you holding them accountable? What list are you buying? There's just so many different things that can affect your marketing. And that's why being a master at each one, and I believe in diving deep into one before trying others, is the way to go about it.
So as partners, whose job is it to look at the marketing piece?
So I think it's, the COO, Tyler, he's technically my boss as director of dispositions. He's technically Rhen's boss as director of acquisitions. He's the director of marketing's boss. He's the director of titles boss. He's the director of recruiting's boss. He's the director of finance's boss. So he is technically over that, but we have a director of marketing that's fully focused on our marketing.
So does everyone look at Tyler though to turn on the faucet and say, hey, either turn it down or turn it more up? Or?
I think he's more of in control of that. It's not we look to him to do it. It's just he's monitoring the numbers, and we're collectively as a group making decisions on those numbers. Because, one thing that me and Tyler talk about all the time is like a lot of the decisions in the beginning were based off gut feeling. And I feel like I have a pretty good intuition with making decisions, but what's going to stop you from getting from 5 million to 20, 30 million is changing those gut driven decisions to data driven decisions. So we're really focused on making data driven decisions and making sure that we can measure everything we do in our business.
When you say data driven, you're talking about KPIs.
Correct.
Looking at those and
looking at ROIs, KPIs, looking at how this channel is performing versus this. You can't make, like, literally every decision within your business can be made off data. It's just whether you're tracking that data or not.
Okay. You said pay per lead, not PPC.
Correct.
You're talking about pay per lead, like the third party sites that sell the leads.
Exactly. Yeah.
You guys are having success with that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've used a few of them. We recently just signed on another one that's good. I mean, there's plenty of them that are good. It's just, I guess, finding the right vendor.
Yeah.
I'm not really, to be honest with you, I'm not really involved too much on the marketing side, but it's just a new channel we added recently. We were doing it before, having success with it, and we added it back.
Got you. Direct mail has been a juggernaut for me.
Sure.
It's been our premier marketing channel.
Yep.
We probably send out about 15,000 pieces per month. I'm more of like the solopreneur
Sure.
of the company. How many pieces are you guys pushing out per month?
I think we're sending about 30,000 a month right now.
Okay.
So not like, about double what you're doing, nothing crazy, but I think it's direct mail is one of those channels that you start the first month, you're not really going to see results. You start the second month, you're not going to see really results. Third month, you're not going to see results. They say to get your money back from initial investment, it's going to take about 6 months. But after that, it starts turning into profit. And the reason why we are successful in direct mail so much is because we've been doing it for such a long time.
Yeah. No, I love direct mail because it's passive, right? And you can control where each piece is going.
Sure.
That's why I love it so much. PPC, I got my ass tore up.
Sure.
When we did that. We got a couple of deals here and there, but for the most part, man, it's just like the cost per lead was just crazy out here in Atlanta.
Sure. And PPC is very dependent on the market you're in, right? Yeah. If you're in a smaller market without a bunch of big players that are, using a PPC budget, you can have success with a lower spend. Here in Atlanta, when you have all the iBuyers that are spending crazy amounts of money on PPC, you better start with a pretty big budget or you're going to get smoked. Yeah. So I think it's just, if you're going to play in that game, you better start with a pretty big budget and you better be ready to adjust pretty quickly throughout the journey. So that's why we haven't done PPC yet, is because it's a high cost of entry. And our money, say we have to start with 30,000 in a month, that 30,000 right now would be way better spent pushing more into direct mail.
Yeah, gotcha. So let's talk the exit strategy. Now, you guys are primarily wholesale company.
Sure.
Now, there's different ways to wholesale, right?
Yep.
You got the old school method where you're just selling to the cash buyers or the hedge funds. And now you've got the newer method. I wouldn't say it's brand new. It's been around for a while. It's not many people have been aware, but are utilizing it, which is you can get a property. You're being transparent with the homeowner, what you're going to do, and market it on the MLS.
Yep.
What are you guys doing to have the most success whenever you wholesale?
So we list all of our properties on the market. Right. We're doing that new way. Some people say it's novations. It's not really novations. It's really just listing your wholesale deals on the MLS and having the authority to do it. A novation is actually where you're using institutional financing. An end buyer has institutional financing like VA, FHA, USDA, some conventional loans where you actually have to use a novation agreement and basically create an A to C contract where you're involved, but you're not involved. And so there's kind of a misconception in the industry is, listing on the MLS, that's a novation. Well, it's really not, because if you get a cash buyer on the MLS represented by a realtor and you do a double close, you're not ever novating that deal. You're just simply double closing it and you list it on the MLS. So that's one big misconception right now in the business, but we lock up our deals direct to seller and then we list them on the market.
So it's not an innovation. You're just literally just wholesaling on the MLS.
Correct. But all of our acquisition side is direct to seller. So we're not actually like acquiring any deals from the MLS.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's acquisition side is direct to seller. Disposition side is on the MLS.
Do you guys do any DTA, direct to agent deals? Like as far as like building relationships with agents and having them bring you guys off market opportunities?
So that's how I got started in the business. I kind of touched on that in the beginning. Is all I would do is call agents every single week, cold call them. And basically I got a list in my phone where I cold called an agent. I saved them in my phone as realtor, then their name, and any new person in real estate can utilize this strategy. So call them, introduce myself, save them in my phone as realtor, then their name. I had about a list of 200. I would text every 2 weeks and I got consistent deal flow that first year from it. And I still today get deals from that same list and I don't even text it anymore. It just comes in. I've built those relationships over time. Last week, I closed on 2 flips from one agent. I made that relationship 2.5 years ago. I'll make 50 grand a piece on those flips.
Dude, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So the power of going through agents is so great. And it's just, supplying them with value, right? Yeah. I told her, I don't know if this is 100% legal or not, but I told her, hey, you can represent me on the buy, earn your 3% there. I'll cut you a check for 10% of the profits on the back end.
I don't see why that would be illegal. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know all the agent laws because I'm not an agent myself, but, we list all of our own flips in-house. And, even if an agent brings us, we don't, allow them to list because we just want to have control over that. But I'm happy to pay them out a fee of the profits on the back end. So, we close a 50 grand flip that she brought us. She brought me 2 of those. She's going to get a check for 10K in about 2 months.
Wow. Dude, that's amazing, man.
And she got paid on the buy, 3% on each side.
Yeah. So she's making more than the traditional way of being a realtor.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly. I love working with realtors, and I think it's a huge avenue for deals, a very underutilized avenue for deals. But in my opinion, it's going to be more difficult to wholesale the deal because you're not in control, and that's kind of why I went out to direct to seller marketing in the beginning. But if you have the ability to buy them all day, great deal source.
Yeah, and you touched on something important. It's having the relationships, right? Because a lot of people understand that this is a sales and marketing business, but it's also a relationship business. And it's not just about having relationships with people who are going to bring you deals. It's having relationships with people who can bring you top talent too.
100%.
That's one of the reasons why you've grown so much and why you're having so much success. It's because you have solid relationships. So what is most important, sales or marketing?
Well, I think you got to have a combination of both, right? If you're not doing the marketing, you got to be doing work to create the marketing, basically like the relationships like we talked about. I think they're both super important. But I really think the most important piece about scaling an organization to where we have and beyond is to have that recruiting, right? So many businesses in our industry, they don't understand the recruiting aspect. It's the biggest aspect. We believe in people, strategy, execution in that order, people being first. And how are we able to get top players? Well, we started attracting a few. And then we hired a director of recruiting, and all he does is interview people all day and go find people. I don't want people in my organization that are out looking for jobs. I want to go headhunt people from other organizations and bring them in my organization. Because if they're job hunting, they're probably not an A player.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we are constantly focused on pulling talent away from other organizations.
Do you prefer people to know real estate background?
Doesn't matter at all. If they're an A player, they will find success in our business, whether they have real estate background or not. I think there's some advantages to have a little real estate experience, but a lot of times it can lead to a lot of misconceived concepts, right? And bad information that they think they know real estate, especially real estate agents. It's really hard to tell a real estate agent how a different way to do business because they're so set in their ways. So I think there's good and bad to it, but if someone has previous real estate experience, they better be very adaptable and they better be willing to change their mindset around how traditional real estate is run versus how we do business.
Gotcha. So if I'm a struggling wholesaler that's watching this right now, right?
Yep.
And let's say I had a good amount of success. Maybe I was dependent on the hedge funds, but I'm in a complete rebuild mode.
Yep.
Right? And I got a limited budget. What steps would you take in 2023, June 2023, to get back on track to where I can start doing, 4 to 5 deals a month?
It's always the same answer for me because I get this question a lot. Revenue driving activities. So many people are focused on, hey, let's build out this process. Hey, let's build out this SOP. Hey, let's, work on our accountability chart. If you're not driving revenue when you're in an infant stage where you're trying to rebuild, what are you even doing? Because you need cash. That's your oxygen for your business. And even me, when the market shifted in July, I had to get into selling deals like crazy. I was our disposition rep during that time. Tyler had to step up into that role, selling deals. Rhen was on the acquisition side, acquiring deals. So you have to be willing to drive revenue. That's what fixes everything. That's what cures all in business because it's the oxygen for your business. So if you're struggling, I would recommend spending 80% of your time working on driving revenue. Spend that other 20% working on the business.
The market shift wiped out a lot of people, right? It's still wiping out people, a lot of wholesalers. How come it hasn't wiped you guys out?
I think, we are part of a real estate mastermind collective genius who has a ton of people who have been there before during market shifts, who have been through the '08 shift, the ones before that, and we're able to learn from them. So we have a lot of good people in our corner telling us how to navigate it. But we also weren't afraid to get our hands dirty. A lot of the people that were wiped out were people that, hey, they may have had some salespeople closing deals for them, and they weren't willing to step back in that seat and drive revenue. I think that's probably the biggest reason is they weren't willing to get their hands dirty because when the market was super hot, you could be extremely mediocre and get great results. Right now, during this market, you have to be great just to get good results.
100%, dude. I've got one final question for you, man. What's next for Clint Cooper and Padley?
I think what's next is we are going to continue to grow the organization. We're going to impact a lot of lives and we're going to help a lot of people. The more I can do that, the more everything else is going to fall into place.
You guys got a coaching program, right?
Yep. Wartime CEO, Rhen Bartlett, my business partner, is actually the owner of it, and me and Tyler coaching it. It's a designed for wholesalers. It's designed for people who are looking to, whether you're wanting to get your first deal or you're looking to scale your organization, we're giving you all the tools and completely uncovering the hood of our business of how we do everything from our processes, our procedures, our sales process, everything across the board. You have access to our business. And we think that it's probably going to be a pretty big business because we have a lot to offer in the wholesale arena.
Yeah, That's awesome, man. Listen, man, I appreciate you coming on here, giving value. This was a dope ass conversation. There's a lot of high value stuff in this. Guys, if you're watching this right now, please like, share, subscribe, comment your favorite part about this episode. Clint, how can they find you, man?
You can find me on Instagram at Clint Closer, on Facebook at Clint Cooper. Pretty much everywhere else is just Clint Closer.
Yeah, guys, I already talked to him. We're going to have to do a part 2. There's so much more to go into. But again, please like, share, subscribe, comment your favorite part about this episode. Until then, I will see you guys on the next episode.